Thanks for listening to the Film Florida podcast. If you have a minute, please remember to subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. Thanks, and we appreciate your support. Welcome to the Film Florida podcast. My name is John Lux, and I'm the Executive Director of Film Florida. Today, our guest is Joel Silver. Joel is the owner of Silver Digital Media, and they create digital media for clients throughout Florida and the southern U.S. Thanks for joining us on the podcast today, Joel.
Yes, sir. John Lux. Wow. I am on the podcast finally. I've been listening for a while, and I am thrilled to actually now be a guest on your show.
Well, we're happy to have you. So let's start like we start most of the interviews. What's your origin story? How did you get your start in the industry?
Well, hey, I've been doing this, I guess, all my life, really. I love video and I love producing, and I went to school for it. But even before that, I was always playing with cameras and stuff. Now, because I've been around for a while, I've been through many iterations and many different technologies. But since the VHS camera, I have been making videos when I was little, and I've gone all throughout all that, all the way up to 4K now, as a full-time video production company. So we definitely have lots of fun with it. And they say if you can work and do what you love, then you're doing something right.
So let's talk about Silver Digital Media. If someone asked me what the company does, I would say you're a production company. But the definition of a production company has changed so much in the last 5 to 10 years. So how do you describe your company?
Well, that's interesting and a great question because it is hard to describe, and it has changed so much just in terms of the types of videos that people need. Now, again, I've been doing this for a long time, so we used to make 20, 30-minute videos, promotional videos, marketing videos. We used to have to put them on DVDs and distribute them around to all sorts of people. The distribution was not easy, but that whole format has mostly changed now. Most people now just need short-form video. So we are a full-service production company, and we do videos of all types, all scopes, all sizes, because people need high-quality video for various outlets, mostly social media. And some people want Facebook, some people want Instagram, some people want LinkedIn. All those are different types of videos. But what we need to do is just try to satisfy what the client needs and what they want. And really, it's important, especially in our industry, to realize that people don't always know what they want. First of all, they don't understand how important high quality is. Sometimes organizations of large sizes putting out videos they shoot on an iPhone without proper audio, without really good video, it reflects on them, and we get that call a lot, and they say, well, we've tried this ourselves, but it doesn't work. We need to produce some good-looking stuff for our social media that reflects, the size of our company. So when we get those kind of calls, obviously, we do that. Now, sometimes it's very simple, basic stuff, person talking to a camera. You can create that in high quality and make it a better experience for the viewer. Now, in addition, we create incredibly complex videos too, marketing videos, promotional videos, lots of editing, lots of tracks, lots of audio tracks and effects and things like that. And so we can go up and down the scale depending on what the person wants, but we will do the size of the project that the client needs, and we have the staff and the resources to make all that happen. In the new age with social media and digital media, we are trying to help people create a high-quality version of what they think is the right thing to do and the right message that they're trying to create for their viewers that they know very well.
So what makes your story a little bit different than most people we talk to is you do all of those things primarily in Tallahassee for many that work in and around the state legislature. So talk about some of the things you do on the legislative side.
Well, definitely. And there's a lot of stuff that happens in the Capitol. There's a lot of content that I'm noticing this more and more in life. There's so much content and things that happen on a daily basis in different places that are worthy of capturing, because now that the audiences are segmented so much on social media, there's an audience for almost everything. And that's what we just see. Obviously, there's Facebook pages and websites for everything in the world. So one of the biggest areas that I'm involved in is up here in Tallahassee, and that is this whole world that is our government and our legislative process. And this one's interesting because people don't really know and sometimes don't even understand what is happening up here in Tallahassee. So what we do is we capture and create some content from all of the stuff that happens. And there's a lot of different audiences up here. One of the biggest areas that is really interesting is the associations. So every industry has an association, almost every industry, okay? So if you think about the doctors and the lawyers and the restaurants and the hotels and the nursing homes, everybody has an association that represents them up here in Tallahassee. We are well known and very good at creating content for those people because they in themselves have their own audience, and sometimes thousands and thousands of members around the state of Florida, sometimes smaller and sometimes even larger than that. And what's important when you talk about producing content on social media, you don't always have to have 1 million views. You don't always have to be viral, as long as the audience is getting the message. These associations have an audience of people that need to see content, and they're interested in that content. So we help create that content. Now, a lot of them, we create standard types of videos. So, for example, if it is the Nursing Home Association, we will create either videos about the nursing home industry, about caring for the elderly. If it is the Restaurant or Hotel Association, it's about the good things they do, about tourism and that sort of thing, about hospitality and the importance of all of that in the Florida economy. We create videos like that, but also they are doing a lot of work, and most people don't realize this, but associations are doing a ton of work up in Tallahassee, either fighting for good legislation or fighting against bad legislation, depending on what their industry is. So there's a lot of action that happens in Tallahassee, and we're capturing some of that at the Capitol. And, since I've been around, I know this process so well. We're in the committee meetings. We know where the committee meetings are happening. We know where the press conferences are, and, people obviously are always giving us the information too and asking us to do it. So we're all over this Capitol, which is 22 floors high in one building. Those big grand chambers you see on the on TV, the House of Representatives chamber, the Senate chamber, and that's great visuals and great content that is attractive and people like to see. And what happens there is these usually great speeches as well for people that are fighting for an industry. So you hear your elected officials supporting things that that the industry likes. So it's good stuff to capture because it really helps bring home that message, and it shows all of the work that's being done up here in your state capital.
Well, and we can definitely speak to that from our organization. And while we're not based in Tallahassee, we certainly have interests up there. And you've even captured some things for us because you're there and know the landscape. And so we can kind of point you in the right direction of what we're looking for. And you've been a great help to our organization. So speaking of the legislature, it's obviously well known that our industry has struggled in recent years to garner support from the state legislature. But you have a working relationship with just about everyone at the Capitol. Does it ever put you in a tough spot knowing that people you're working with sometimes make decisions that are negatively affecting your industry?
It doesn't really. The first thing to know is that Tallahassee is nowhere near as partisan and divided as Washington, D.C. And you see the stuff in D.C. with the constant bickering and fighting. In Tallahassee, there is a little bit more of camaraderie, and everybody kind of knows each other a little bit better and sort of is on a friendly basis. Most people are. Even Democrats versus Republicans, even if they disagree on the floor, they'll probably see each other out in the halls and give a handshake or something like that and move on with their day. It's not something that everybody takes too personal. Now, there are some that do quarrel, but for the most part, it's not quite as partisan and divided. But in terms of my role and everything, We do a lot of work for, like I said, associations, and we also do a lot of work for some of the elected officials because they do a lot of stuff up here in a lot of different areas.
But it's important for you, you have to run your business. So it's not like you can get involved in some of the, specific conversations for or against our industry per se, because you have to protect your own business interests, right?
Well, right. But you really, when you look at this process up here, people in the legislature do it all the time, and they will disagree on one bill, but then they'll get along and co-sponsor another bill because they have a special interest. So that happens a lot in Tallahassee. And while I completely love our industry, and I think it's a fantastic industry, I believe that you can't change minds overnight, and it's a long process. So you got to make sure you always work with people and you're always good to people, and eventually, you work things out and hopefully things end up going your way.
Well, speaking of that, in terms of building relationships and not necessarily changing people's minds overnight, but maybe over time you can find some common ground. We hear the question a lot, what's the best way to engage with legislators? Sometimes we're being asked that question, and other times we're asking others to get engaged. So from your time up in Tallahassee, you're more engaged, more embedded than all of us. How would you advise people to get to know their legislators, build those relationships, and help them understand our industry?
And that is always a challenge. So another really interesting question. And it's something that a lot of people aren't familiar with, this whole legislative process and the whole government process. There's so much to it, and it takes a lot to pass a bill. What you may not know is there's hundreds and hundreds of bills that are filed each year, and only a very, very small portion actually pass because it takes so much to get a bill that everybody can agree on, or at least in this process, a majority can agree on, because that's what it takes to pass a bill. So you got 120 members in the House of Representatives, you got 40 members in the Senate, you got a governor. Everybody's got to sign these bills and approve these bills, I should say, for them to pass through the process. It's a strange and different world up in Tallahassee. Now, what's important, and this is really important and I want people to know this, and it reflects a little bit on what I was saying in my last answer, but what we must always do is we must always approach people in a kind way. One thing that doesn't work well in the legislative process is creating enemies, and you don't want to do that. For the most part, legislators are good people, and they're doing what they think is right. They operate each and every day when they're in the Capitol, and they think they're doing what's right. Now, a small caveat, and to what another interesting point is, legislators, there's no way for them to know everything about every industry. Legislators are made up of a wide swath of different careers. Some of them are lawyers, some of them are doctors. I think there's some veterinarians in there. There's all kinds of different professions. There is no way for them to know all the facts about every industry. So it's really important that they get informed, and they have to be informed in a positive way. So when you're dealing with legislators, so it's very tempting sometimes to hate people and look badly upon them if they don't do what you want them to do. But it's not a good strategy when you are in a process like this. When you deal with legislators, you want to always you want to try to be helpful to them, inform them about issues, and you want to do it in a positive way. If you come to a legislator in a negative way, then it's very easy when they come up to a vote to say, well, that person wasn't good to me, wasn't nice to me. I'm not even going to listen to their opinion because they were yelling and screaming at me. Nobody is ever really convinced by someone who comes at you negatively yelling and screaming. So the people that are successful in this process, the people that start to get things to move their way, do it in a positive way. And sometimes it takes many, many years. We have so many industries that people have filed a bill for so many years, and they never get everything they want. most industries won't ever get everything they want because there's so many people doing so many different things, and there's so many different issues. So what I would recommend, first of all, if you come to the Capitol, and I think we should always have our folks, John, in this industry, they should all come to the Capitol. They should meet their legislators and interact with them and see how the process works. I think it's a great thing. You should definitely do it at least once, but you should probably do it more than once. And you should understand how the process works. But real important is to make sure that you have a good relationship with your local legislator. So every district, every city, every place in Florida has a member of the House of Representatives and a senator. And those people are the ones that represent you. Those are people you vote for on Election Day. So the best piece of advice is to know your legislator. And even if you want to go so far as to become their expert on our industry. So if they have a question about our industry, they can call you and say, hey, what would you think about this topic? What do you think about a bill that would address this? How can we help your industry doing this? If you can become their expert on it, and that helps them because, again, they might not know anything about this industry at all, so it helps them to have somebody. But if you come to them in this positive way, and we have a very cool industry. That's one of the great things about the video, film industry. We have a really cool industry, and it's something that your local legislator would probably like to see and be a part of, especially if they came over. You give a tour of your studio facility. You could give a tour of a set. You give a tour of a video production that's going on. Show them all those things that happen. Hey, listen, if you get into celebrities and that kind of thing, then you're really doing great stuff, and it's a great experience. But if you invite your local legislator, your House member, your Senate member, to see the process and see what you're doing, then they get immersed in the whole industry, and they most likely will understand it more, and you can start to move that needle to hopefully having them get a positive feel about the industry, want to help the industry, want to help you because you're their friend, and that right there is how you start to have success in the legislative process.
I totally agree with you, Joel. We get questions all the time come legislative session, like who should I call, who can I contact, and we take those offers and we give those people the call to action. But what we try and explain to them is, June, July, August, September, those are really more important dates because that's when you can find your local legislators in their district office and they're not as pressed for time and they're not as overwhelmed with, like you said, hundreds and hundreds of bills that they have to review. You can, instead of getting 5 minutes during legislative session, you could get 15, 20, 30 minutes in a meeting when you grab them in their district office over the summer. And so that's really where you make progress, is building those relationships in between legislative sessions, not being in a panic come, day one of legislative session and saying, what can I do? What can I do? You really need to start that legwork months in advance.
100% right. And if you invite them to your facility when you're recording a commercial or something and show them all the cool cameras and all the lights and all that stuff, you show them all that, you might get an hour with them probably, even more time. And I did want to say one other thing that I just remembered, and I know this one is difficult for people, but I would never put a Facebook post or a social media post up criticizing elected officials. I think it's one of the worst things you can do. And I know it makes you feel better to say, why are the legislators, why don't they understand this issue? And, much more negative I've seen on posts. But I think that is a terrible thing to do because it puts the negative slant on the industry, and it doesn't entice them to want to help at all if they're always getting bashed by the industry. It just goes back to my point that the positive in this process always works better than the negative.
So, Joel, we've talked a lot about your work in Tallahassee, but I don't want people to think that's all you do. So talk about some of the other projects you've done outside the state capitol.
while Tallahassee has been our base of operations, more and more I'm rarely actually in the city because, we are traveling for so many folks. Now, because of the work we do with state associations, we travel with those folks a lot. So we're constantly creating content. Now, one of the things we do a lot of is we love the tourism industry. Lots of folks visit Florida. We like to work with those folks, and tourism is one of our big areas. And I'm familiar with a lot of the major players in that whole industry. So we're really big in that tourism industry, and we create a lot of content to hopefully get people in Florida, moving around Florida, visiting different places, as well as around the country, seeing great things that are happening in Florida and bringing them down here. So tourism is one big one we love. We've traveled with several groups around the country as well. We've been out to San Francisco with some national firms, international firms, where we're making videos for those kind of folks as well. We enjoy the art of storytelling, and that's really what video is about. And anybody that's listening to this podcast and is in our world knows that, and those make the best stories. So we work with a national group that does insurance and financial planning, and we tell wonderful success stories of things happening around the country. And when you tell those positive stories, that helps everything for a business. It helps their morale. It helps get them more customers. It helps the overall just feel of the industry. So people love video like nothing else, and it's why it is the fastest growing segment online. It's why more people watch videos online than anything else. It's why more people are reading less, and it's so exciting for our industry what's happening, and we see that growth, and we're excited, and we hopefully we can keep on doing this for many years.
Well, and we are often saying, in our conversations with whoever is listening, that there's more content available than ever before. And our goal is to make sure that more of that content is created right here in Florida. So we're right there with you.
Yes, and we're going to make that happen.
So if you're ever in Tallahassee at the state capitol and there's a video or still camera around, chances are it's Joel or someone from his team. So Joel, thanks so much for sharing your stories and being on the podcast with us today.
It has been great, John. And before I go, I want to make sure I say thank you to you as well for everything you do. In addition to being now a podcast star and a host of a whole podcast series, your other job, which is running Film Florida, you're doing an amazing job. I've been to board meetings with you. People love your leadership, and you're trying to keep a industry together of people that have varying ideas and varying personalities, but you're doing an amazing job at it, and I thank you for everything that you're doing.
Well, I appreciate that, Joel. That's very nice of you to say. So that'll do it for this episode of the Film Florida podcast. Thanks to Joel Silver for joining us, and thank you for listening. To learn more about Silver Digital Media, visit silverdigitalmedia.com. That's silverdigitalmedia.com. For more information about Film Florida, go to filmflorida.org or visit our social media pages on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And please don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review the podcast.